If you're interested to see what I look like in real life, then check out my Instagram at Joe the Insomnaik. Well, to put it simply, first, I could care less about religion and anything to do with it. This was up until I had a really weird encounter that started to make me question my own faith. It all started from around April 2nd, 2019, and the doctors tell me and my family that my grandpa has around 6 hours to live. He's diagnosed with late-stage liver cancer and cirrhosis. The whole experience was very emotional for me, because seeing a man I grew up with for 17 years on the verge of death is just too much to handle. Throughout the whole process of him passing, religion was a really big process as well. At the hospital, a chaplain came many times to comfort us with the promise of him going to a better place. I always thought it was a lie though. I thought if God really existed, he wouldn't have let my grandfather go through this process. Towards the end of his life, the doctors thought it would be best if my grandpa was moved into a hospice. So before we moved him away, my grandpa wanted to call a priest from our local Catholic church to do his last rites at the hospice. I rode with my uncle to the hospice, and the whole ride is dreadful. The whole process was just too confusing for me, and I couldn't even believe he was gonna die. I was led on this false hope that somehow he would survive. That was until we got to the hospice. When we arrived, the ambulance also arrived. Before he got taken into his room, the EMTs wanted to do their prayers for him. Everyone from doctors to the EMTs to the hospice owners all prayed for him. Unfortunately, the priest never arrived to do the last rites. My grandfather died 5 minutes after he got settled into a hospice room, so much quicker than what we expected. Seeing life go and drain so quickly in front of my eyes messed me up. It was unbelievable and devastating simultaneously. I couldn't properly think of anything at the time. Now fast forward to next week. The wake and funeral had already happened. I read a scripture from the Bible for him so I could have some closure once and for all. As I was starting to question my religion, but then the experience I'm about to tell you was the icing on the cake. I fully understand the experience but I need to put in some background. In my grandpa's room, there's a big cross as seen in the photo, and then right next to the cross was a music box with a photo of what I assumed to be the Virgin Mary. When the string was pulled, a song would play out for 30 seconds. Every morning and night, my grandfather would pray to the cross and play the music box. He couldn't go to church as his condition worsened, so he prayed at home. And he was a really big believer of God, always telling me and my uncle and aunt that his life has to be lived with a little bit of good inside and God. And after he died, we promised that we'll keep the cross and music box in his memory. Now the experience we had to clean out a variety of his old junk though was weird. Cleaning out clothes, also trying to find photos and other memorabilia for him. Me and my grandma were the only ones in the house at the time. Half of the room had already cleared out. It was mostly just clothes and really random stuff that wasn't necessarily of value to my grandpa. I was sitting on my grandpa's bed while she was finishing up cleaning the stuff in the closet, then out of nowhere, the music box begins playing the same song it usually does. No one pulls the string though. My grandma literally jumps out of the closet in shock. The music is just played by itself, as if it's been pulled. I was scared and confused at the same time. It may have seemed minor to what I usually see on this board, but it perplexes me to this day. How can a music box just play like that, and in such weird timing too? As my grandmother put it, She told me that it was probably the last sign of my grandpa's presence letting us know he was okay, just before he went. Now sadly no one believed me or her. I've kept this story in for so long, but I decided to tell it because I hope others will understand. I'm just glad knowing that he's made it to a better place. So I listened to a lot of paranormal podcasts while driving, and the one I was listening to tonight said something that brought back a memory from when I was 16. A friend of mine lived in this kind of big subdivision out in the middle of nowhere in Illinois. It was just cornfields and woods all around. One night, probably around 10 or 11, I was dropping him off at his home. This was over 10 years ago, and my car only had a tape deck, so I had a tape adapter thing hooked up to a portable CD player, so it turned my radio into a CD player. After I dropped him off, I switched the CD to this old punk band, a CD I had listened to many times. Well, it's super dark in his subdivision. Like, I swear, they didn't have street lights. I had been out there over 50 times and knew my way. Somehow, I managed to get lost. I don't know what happened, but I had no idea where I was. I thought, this is creepy, but it's only so big, so if I drive around eventually I'll find an exit. There was only one entrance that had a little gas station and a gate. So I'm driving around for probably 20 minutes, and the CD I had put in only had 6 songs on it. All 6 had played and the CD's over. So I was grabbing a different one to put in, and all of a sudden, the most gut-wrenching scream comes through my speakers. I immediately pulled the CD player off the adapter cord and stopped it. Even 13 years later, I can still imagine the sound. It's a woman. It's a type of scream you'd hear if someone's being murdered or experiencing something equally as horrible. I drove the rest of the way in silence, trying to make sense of what had happened. I finally made it out of the subdivision and to my home. The next day, I was still trying to figure out what had happened, so I put the CD back in. I put it on the last song and waited to see if maybe it had some secret track that I had missed out, but I hear nothing. I still have no clue what happened to this day. I'm a bow hunter and I like to still hunt, which is when you're dressed in full camo and walk through the woods rather than sit in a tree stand. Last October, I was coming down a hill into a marshy area. It was kind of late, and enough so that the side of the mountain is covered in shadows. I live in PA where our mountains are completely covered in trees, and it gets dark fast. When I get to the bottom of the hill, I notice that it's completely silent. No sounds at all. I feel all the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. But I've been creeped out before in the woods, so it's not a big deal. I kept on. I've been hunting in this area before, but I've never went down the hill. I continue creeping through the woods, mind you going slow, so you can barely hear my footsteps because deer are hard to sneak up on. And then I hear a voice call out from behind a thicket of a small tree, saying, "Help, my name, come over here, I'm in trouble, help me." And I swear to God it's my brother's voice, but he lives in Nevada, another state, so it can't be my brother, but it said my name. It took me only a second to realise something wasn't right, and when I did, I ran faster than I ever have in my life. Only my dad knew where I was hunting that day. The area's massive. No one would be able to find me in there either. I don't understand how something could have knew my name and sounded just like my brother. I don't know what the hell that thing was, but I've never went back to that woods again. I'll move to the desert with my brother, where at least I know he's around me. Last night, on the 22nd of July, my girlfriend and I were getting ready for bed, and like we usually do, go get our cats outside and head to bed. This time it's a bit different, due to our cats almost avoiding going outside and coming straight to the bedroom. We ignore this behaviour and keep them in the living room to make an easy clean-up if they need to go to the bathroom. We say goodnight to them, then heading into the bedroom with full intentions of going to bed. Now this is important because when we're in the bedroom for the night, there is always shuffling on our silverware, or anything left out will get rattled and moved, even when the cats are sleeping. This time was different, however, and if whatever moves the dishes is actual, something both my girlfriend and I saw it, or them that night. I understand it could be due to disorientation because of working and being tired around 11:30. I rule out exhaustion because I'd gotten done recovering my hacked PS3 account and having to deal with some crap from Sony. We settle in to watch YouTube and head to bed when I get hungry. My girlfriend takes notice and gets up without saying a word, heading towards the door to make some food. As she opens the door, she looks back at myself to joke about YouTube when I see what looks like a thumb off the thumb of Spy Kids, yet it's around 5'10". I instantly call my girlfriend away from the door when she freaks out, running back to the bed saying she had seen something by the apartment door. When we calm down, she explains to me what she saw. A being around 5'11" with a black suit on and an almost LED Y-sign strip going down its black suit, separating just above the chest area. We wandered the house looking for intruders, which is my first thought, but find nothing but scattered clothes that have been placed in laundry bins not minutes before the experience. Where we had seen the beings was warm spots on the ground, like they had been in the same spot for a while, with a heavy static feeling in the room and a very noticeable drop in the living room temperature as well. I was hoping to shed some light on my situation, but I can't really. I've never had anything like it before in my life. At the moment I'm in hospital, I was sleeping when I heard a child's voice say "Mum" as clear as a bell. I was disorientated from sleep, so I got up to go get my 2-year-old but realised where I am. My room is near the children's ward, so I turned my flashlight on my phone on just to make sure it's not a misplaced child. I decided I imagined it and sat back down, and the blankets moved around me, but I felt like there was a child's head resting on my feet. On goes the flashlight again. There's nothing. As soon as the light goes on, everything stops. Turning the lights back off. This happens 3 more times. Then the light is off again, and I feel the thing on my feet, then hear a child say again. And now I'm seeing an almost there, bare outline of a tiny head walking around the bed. But each time I turn the lights on, I see nothing. I eventually decide to ignore it and try and go back to sleep again, and sleep I do. Now the weird thing about my experience is during my whole time there, I never had anything like it, or any experiences leading up to it. You'd think if it was all in my head it'd be due to changing meds or something, but there was none of that. It still goes on to be the most scary day of my life and an experience I've never been able to explain. I grew up on a reservation in the woods with my mother and father. My father worked as a welder and was a terrible alcoholic. His work was far off in the biggest city, so he would get up on early Monday morning to leave for work, which was around 4 hours away by car. My mother was disabled. I don't remember exactly why. I just know she had surgery on her shoulder earlier in life and it forced her to stop working. My father was very abusive to both me and my mother. I had actually called the police on him more than once in my childhood alone. To shorten this up, in my entire life, my father had done meth, weed and alcohol and ended up breaking his leg once due to getting on the drugs again. So he is too disabled. I'm only telling you this so that I was not raised properly by any means. I can't lie, I'm still very angry towards my father and haven't spoken to him since moving out. With my father being gone all the time, my mum, who was a whole different story, but I don't blame her. She tried her best with everything she had, but she definitely got worse as time went on. When I was little, my brother and I would hang out together, mostly because my mum was out in town and he needed to watch me. He wasn't very nice to me and I don't blame him. He had been dealing with my parents for far longer than I had. I don't have the greatest memory, so you'll have to bear with me if you can, please. My mother told me some strange stories when I was older about some weird things that happened shortly after I arrived. She told me that one day, around midnight, the doorbell rang and there was a knock. Now she was confused like anybody would be. Why would they knock this late at night? She told me that she went to look out the door. Now we had one of those big doors with the glass at the very top you can peek through. So she did so, and there's nobody out there, so she just opened the door. Remember, we lived out in the woods, 30 minutes out of town. There's no reason for anybody to be out here that late at night, and this was well before my father's drug addiction. She swears on her life that when she opened the door, everything in the house went haywire. All the lights began flickering on and off. The power, it went on, but suddenly turned off again on its own. And just as abruptly as it began, it stopped. She said that after the incident, I would not sleep in my bedroom alone. She'd always say apparently I'd cry and cry until she'd let me sleep with her. She told me that when I was younger, I had a tiny stuffed rabbit that would sing and dance. She left this in my bedroom, and it's the type that you need to press to actually turn on, not one that works through motion detection. She told me that apparently it'd go off sometimes in the dead middle of the night while she was trying to sleep. I promise you, with everything that I am, that this happened. Please believe me. I'm not writing this story as a story, I'm recalling events that happened strictly as they did. When I was little, the first thing I noticed was how I always felt as though I was being watched. I never felt alone. Even in my bedroom, I didn't feel alone. You could chalk it up to all the physical and emotional abuse. I do suffer from anxiety and depression today. Don't even get me started on high school. I was very isolated and felt very lonely for a huge amount of time in my childhood, and of course, I had friends that I made up in my head, and I'd go outside to play sometimes, but mostly watch TV. We didn't have a computer at the time. My brother moved out one day. He was more a wild person than me, and loved to party and drink. So my father told him he had to leave. My mum is still upset at him, but while he was here, there was a few strange things that we did experience, sometimes together, but he didn't see it the same way I did. Now, we used to have one of them old TVs, you know, the ones, the giant box ones with the wooden frame, early CRT flat screen, I guess. This was the first sign that things are really off. This would sometimes just turn right off after I turned it on again, and I had a lot of dreams about it. Sometimes when we'd leave for town, my mum and I, we'd come home and it'd be on when we sworn it was off, and as cliche as it sounds, it's always on static. My mother was a firm believer in spirits, so that's what she immediately thinks. And like I said, I was gullible as a child, and my mum knew best in my eyes. So of course I believe her. I'm a very, very lonely child. I lived in the middle of nowhere and had nobody I could talk to. So sometimes I spoke to the ghost we had. I even gave it a nickname, but you better believe I'm not saying it. It was horribly embarrassing. Now, nothing really happens for a few years other than the feeling, the same sort of ominous I'm watching you feeling. It wasn't until one night where I'd forgotten to turn off the lamp in the living room that I made my first mistake. I asked, "Can you turn off the lamp for me?" It flickered. The bulb flickered. I was in my mum's room at the time. I used to sleep on her floor. I suffered terribly from insomnia and still do, and I screamed. I screamed as loud as I could, in true terror. Of course my mum was awake and asked me what's wrong. I told her, but I honestly can't remember. Some of these memories are blocked out, or perhaps I pretend that they didn't happen because I didn't want to believe them. I'm almost, more than anything, numb to them. It's the only thing I can describe it as, but it gotten worse. This is a separate event, but I'm putting it here because this is how it somehow happened. It's hard to remember the exact date, but my sleep was horrible and still is, so to the days kinda blending together, and it's easier for you to forget things when you don't wake up early in the morning. My mum and I went into town. We're heading to my cousin's. I don't remember the exact reason. It may have been due to my aunt's death, but I'm still not sure. This could have been before she passed. Now, my cousins lived in a very busy part of our small town. She lived in an actual suburb, which is crazy to me, because I had to walk a mile to see my neighbours, not like we had any. My mum tells me that she didn't see this happen, but my cousin told me she believed me. When we entered her 2-story, small and definitely minimum wage rental house, I felt dread that was almost overwhelming immediately, and of course brushed it off. I looked up the stairs. The staircase made me feel terrified. It felt like I shouldn't go up there, but I brushed it off too. Now, my mum then took a seat next to the front door, and I sat down on the couch. Out of the middle of nowhere, a series of loud thuds came down the stairs, fast and frantically, and the front door, which had been locked, unlocked itself, swung open. So did the screen door, then slammed shut. My mum was sitting right next to the door, and she told me that she hadn't seen it. I mean, how the hell did she not see a door fly open? I asked my cousin, and she told me that her daughter wakes up in the night pointing at the corner of her room screaming ghost. We only ever went to see my cousin twice, that time and once for a party, but I don't believe anything happened at the party. I never asked my cousin if she had a cat, but although I'm sure you won't believe this, I saw one at the top of the stairs. When we stepped into the building, there was a black cat staring at me from atop of the staircase. Fast forward to us being home. Quite a while after all of this happened, I was probably starting to get into my teens by this point. Things began getting weirder and weirder around my home. This first thing I noticed is I didn't feel watched anymore, but I didn't feel alone. I guess I didn't feel scared. I've had this idea in my head that my house was haunted by someone who my mum thought was here to protect us. I totally embraced this new household member. Sometimes when I was sitting at my computer, which was my escape from my family, I'd feel a cold breeze around my neck, which I'd call my friend's name and feel it again. This is a mistake. I seriously advertise you don't do this kind of thing. After this, things started escalating. I'd start to hear things from what I could have sworn was on my headphones, even if my computer's off. Of course, I chalk it up to being tired. I wasn't sleeping well in the summer at all. For a couple of nights, I would hear those noises. Now, these genuinely sounded like my friends on Skype, talking to me. I could never figure out what they were saying. I'd just ignore it and go to bed thinking, you're tired, you've been up too late. Now, I went to bed one night. I think I was laying on my side, trying to drift off when I heard it. I heard a horrifying scream coming from the right side of my bedroom. It sounded like a girl screaming in my bedroom. I swear to you, my TV is off. Everything's turned off in my bedroom. I dove under the covers and tried to hide, but after I hear this, I start to hear whispering, saying help me. I was too scared to move. I didn't want to see whatever was making those noises, whatever was talking to me. So I, instead of getting up and leaving, put a pillow over my head and went to sleep. Or tried to. Eventually I did. The next morning I thought to myself, maybe it's my mum's TV, but I quickly put that theory to rest because she was across the house, between multiple walls, and the screen was clear as day. I don't think I mentioned this to anyone. I just went about my day until the next night. The whispers were back, saying the same thing. Help me. Help me. I got brave. I was tired of hearing this girl. I wanted to sleep, so I yelled, I don't know how to help you. And it stopped. Please believe me when I say this. I've gone through countless hours of therapy, talked about everything with my therapist. They never said anything to me about them thinking I had some kind of mental illness or hallucinations. They don't know what to make of it. Maybe I was too tired. Maybe I was scared of something that was only in my imagination. But this was as real to me as breathing is. Now, in fact, I never felt like somebody was with me after that. It felt so quiet and empty. I told my mum about it, and I don't remember what she said. It was so long ago now. I'd call her to ask, but it's early in the morning, and she's not awake now. There was time after that all happened that I'd be up late at night and paranoid again. like somebody was there, but I never experienced anything similar again. You'd think I believed in ghosts after all of that, right? But it's hard to say. I believe in what happened. I believe that there was someone scared and trapped. I wish I had helped her, but at the same time, part of me says it's not real. I had a friend from school, a native friend, and he told me some scary stuff near the end of high school. He told me things like, my friend took an Ouija board out to the old house on our road and broke down, and tried contacting spirits. He says he blacked out, and when he come to, it's burning in front of him on a rock, and he's been Christian ever since. Or the story of the little girl that haunts his home, or the native triad that lures you in at night trying to take you. There's tons of these stories. These are just the ones I remember. It makes you think, when the sun goes down at night, maybe that's when a whole world comes up. A world of people who are lost and scared. A world of people who want nothing more than to torment you. The most terrifying story that ever happened to me was when I was too young to even know about it. When I was a young child, my mum said that I would always have trouble sleeping. Apparently, she would come to me in the night and I would complain about the man saying the numbers. She just thought it was my sleep deprivation, or mind playing tricks on me, and never thought too much of it. Apparently, I would hear someone count from 1 to 10 in a very deep voice, and the voice would slowly count quicker and quicker. She didn't think too much of it, but did consider taking me to a doctor. That all changed, however, when one day she was exploring parts of the house that she hadn't went before. This was specifically the attic. She went there when she bought the home, but never had a need to go up there because her house was big but had lots of storage space, being an old Victorian house. Now she notices something strange as she's pushing around near the window. There's something scratched into the floor, and she's not seen it before. She goes and grabs a torch, and to her horror, there's the numbers marked from 1 to 10. She screamed and sprinted downstairs, grabbed me, and gone to wait in a neighbour's house until my dad come home. What's worse is my dad didn't even believe her until he saw the numbers for himself. He always thought I was daydreaming or just making it up for attention, but seeing them numbers was what really shook him. After this, we quickly moved houses, and I don't know what come of that place. I live in the suburbs, where across the road is a forest which eventually backs up onto a river. Last night around midnight, my dog was scratching at the front door, wanting to be let out to pee. Usually I just let her out in the backyard, but it being a nice summer night anyway, I put her on a leash and let her across the street to the forest so she could do her business. But as soon as we got across the street, she started tugging on the leash and growling, looking towards the forest. I look up and notice a dozen twinkling lights coming from the otherwise pitch black forest, as if people are shining flashlights in my direction. I freaked out, picked up my dog and ran all the way home, looking behind me the whole time. I ran up to my bedroom, which has a pretty good view of the forest, and I began watching out my window. I saw about a dozen men walk out carrying flashlights. They looked as though they were wearing suits in the forest, but the only light I had was a street lamp, so they may have been wearing full black outfits. A couple of them were carrying different briefcases, and about 4 of them were carrying a door. Yep, a random door off its hinges. Then trailing behind them is a woman in a white dress. They walked to the middle of the forest. where the girl proceeds to squat down and pee in the middle of the street. It was then that my neighbour down the road, who I'm guessing saw the flashlights through his window, started screaming, "Hey, what are you doing?" to where the group of people just turned around and casually walked back across the street and into the forest. Deeper now. I woke up my parents, who believed me, but think that I truly just had a bad dream until the morning, when all of the neighbours were outside talking about the occurrence. Word started travelling around the block, and now everyone's talking about it. A couple of neighbours have already called law enforcement about it to keep an eye on our forest/street. There's a ton of rumours going around that they're a cult. I'm just glad I got out of there though when I did. God knows what would have happened if they found me out on my own in the forest. It scares the heck out of me walking home alone at night now too. This was a couple of months ago. I was staying the night at my SO's house. We're laying in bed watching TV. Her two daughters, aged 5 and 8, came into the room. The 5-year-old was leaning against my side of the bed and looking over my chest towards her mother, whose side of the bed is near the wall. The 5-year-old says, "Who's that lady?" Me, thinking she's being silly, says, "That's your mum." But she says no, the lady behind her. She was staring at the wall, looking at eye level, where about a person's eye would be if they're standing there. This gives me chills, so my girlfriend, who was chatting with her other daughter, didn't hear the exchange. Later when I tell her, she gets freaked out and told me that she's pretty sure the place is haunted. Apparently she's had all sorts of stuff happen. Now when I go over there, I get paranoid and have this eerie feeling. I haven't had any experiences like it since, but I've not been there for too long. I really hope there's no more. So some brief background. I work for a company that answers phones and takes messages for businesses when they're closed and out for lunch. Now, we answer for a variety of companies in different fields, including funeral homes. The situation has happened twice that I have spoken to a person myself on the phone, and a few other times as well, and I think it's very interesting and thought maybe I could discuss it with you. So the first time it happened, I took the message from this lady whose mother passed away recently. The body was already picked up and dressed and all that, and was scheduled for the funeral the following day. She calls and is weepy and says if her mother's phone is still in her jacket pocket because they just got a call from her number. I ended up dispatching the call, calling the director to deliver the message verbally, and he says that he'll call her, but the body is in the casket and closed. Waiting in their parlour, I say, "Wow, weird," and he kind of chuckles and says, "This kind of thing happens more than you think." It's been a year or so since that call, and I just yesterday got another call from another funeral home, and other people I work with have had similar types of stories. It's really creepy and interesting to me at the same time.